Cool. So, are you originally from South Carolina?
I'm originally from Texas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I probably moved to South Carolina when I was about 18, but I grew up, funny enough, riding horses in Texas, but never in a Western saddle. Or, everybody says, "Oh, you must have, been around the rodeo or this or that," being from Texas. But I was on hunter jumpers and riding English, from the start.
What part of Texas?
Dallas area.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm a born-in Cowboys fan, so.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. When I was a kid, they were a great team, and we had good teams in the '90s. But it's been a long road waiting since then, and a lot of harassment from your friends.
Yeah, I bet. Well, good for your friends. That's all I
Thanks.
say. But cool. So today, on episode, this will be episode 47 of On the Move. Today we have Aaron Vale joining us from his home in Florida. Aaron, we appreciate you coming on, man. For those who don't know, Aaron is very accomplished in the hunter jumper world, specifically in show jumping, and I won't ramble on too much about his accolades because we've got him here to tell you what he is and isn't good at. But Aaron, thanks for coming on the show, man. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we started recording, you were kind of giving us a background because I knew who you were as a little kid watching your show because you were coming to the Roanoke Valley Horse Show, and then you kind of got on our radar again through Buck. And you said you first met him, you were doing a clinic, or you were at a clinic that was a buck clinic in like the Camden area.
Yep, Camden,
South Carolina.
Camden, South Carolina, probably, 30, 32 years ago.
Yeah.
And just riding my horses, I'd never been exposed to any training, natural horsemanship or resistance free, whatever we want to call it. But I'd never seen it up to that point. And I remember arriving at the clinic one morning, about 27 degrees, and Buck was on. He had a little kind of a buckskin horse he used as a horse to work, extra, do the braking and stuff on the colts. And he was riding before the clinic started, and he had his hands on his hips, riding around in the round pen, and he was doing a perfect figure eight in a 60-foot round pen at a canter with a lead change, dead center of the pen every time, straight line through the center of the pen, never a wobble on the track, and he did that 2 or 3, 4 times. And then he stopped his horse in the center of the pen and backed up with his hands on his hips the whole time. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, you might could learn something from this guy, So it was just that little vision. I'll never forget that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And it's funny, we've talked about it on this podcast before. People who kind of get around Buck and maybe are introduced to that way of thinking for the first time, most of them have a story like that, or like something they saw and it like clicked for them, Yeah. So
I mean, the other interesting thing, they, like I said, that they had a real nice round pen, and they kind of had a viewing platform that was like is higher than the round pen almost, so you could almost watch everything nearly from above, a high enough angle that you could really see the angles that Buck uses for leverage to create softness and things where there was, no real strength used in the process. Everything was just off of feel and leverage and getting the horse to understand all that, through very little hard pressure,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting. So let me ask you this, because you probably know better than Ben and I. It's not necessarily in the hunter jumper world a widespread philosophy, like even today. A lot of that stuff. So what made you? Obviously, you like saw all the value in this, but what made you want to just kind of pursue that more? I mean, it sounds like even with the folks you have helping you today, like that, you're still pretty conscious about using these principles when you start your horses and stuff.
Yeah, I mean that, just it's hard to be as good as someone like Buck is at it, but the level of communication and trust that it creates with the horse, just anything you can do to make the communication and trust better is gonna make a performance better when you're competing. So if you're not having to use strength and things like that, if it's all off of soft cues and the horse follows it, where it becomes hopefully the horse's idea, or at least he believes it is. It just makes you better.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, that's really interesting. So uh, now you said you're pretty hot and heavy in the show world. Like, for maybe someone in our audience who doesn't necessarily know who you are, what if you met someone off the street? What would you tell them you did for a living now?
Well, I ride and train horses. Is basically what I say. But I've got I've competed at the World Cup finals for show jumping the last 2 years, representing the United States. Haven't placed in the top placings yet, but I do it kind of with my own horses. I'm not, a lot of these riders have big sponsors with real expensive horses, and of course horses don't know how much they cost, but I'm working on a smaller budget than most of the people I'm competing against and with. So just like I was telling you earlier, I've got 3 or 4 horses that compete internationally, near, if not top level of the international scene. We're getting close. And then, also trying to develop more young horses to get to that level, so that, maybe one day I would have a horse to win a World Cup final, not just go there, or maybe compete at an Olympics or something big like that,
Sure. And I'm sure this is changing all the time, and you might not even know, because I don't know if that's something that kind of stays on a show jumper's radar. But at one point, weren't you like the highest earning American show jumper?
Yeah, back actually the year or so. Well, I have finished a couple times as the leading money earner as a rider. And once again, last year, or maybe the year before, me and my wife, we were the leading owners, by money earners in the country, which, owning our own horses, and it kind of, the amount of money that we spent to buy our horses and the amount of money they won, compared to some people that would own some really expensive horses, it's kind of almost a pretty neat little trivia question that we were able to be the leading owners in the country with the budget we work with.
Sure. Yeah. No. I would say something like that probably speaks a lot for your program, and what you're doing
Yeah.
with those horses and how you're bringing them along. So I think it's pretty impressive.
On a level it is, and not to. I like to be humble about things, but those are things that we kind of smile and chuckle about at home. So
Right.
you don't want to flaunt anything, but it is kind of makes you proud inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, Ben, did you have a question? I didn't want to interrupt you there.
Nope, I didn't.
Okay.
Ben's
Okay.
gathering information for later, I think.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
taking it all in.
Um. So this is something, this is less on the horsemanship side, but now where you are, it sounds like you're pretty established with, the place in Ocala, and you've got a pretty steady show circuit that you go on. How did you get from, I assume when you were in South Carolina, you were probably, were you working for yourself at that point, or were you working for somebody?
No, I was, working for some people, riding horses and stuff like that. So it's been,
Gotcha.
a long road to get to where I'm at now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's kind of something I'm curious about because again, Ben and I aren't necessarily hunter jumper guys. So, um, what does that look like? Where you go from maybe working at a barn and riding horses for someone because you're like, the guy in his 20s who's getting all the horses rode, to now kind of building up the operation you have. That might be a hard question to answer, but I'm curious what your roadmap kind of was to get from A to B.
I don't know. I probably had an odd roadmap. um, you know, because in my game, in the hunter jumper thing, there's a lot of clientele, and you're working for people, and you're teaching people how to ride and show hunters and jumpers. Um, Probably quite a bit different than anything that you guys do. So most of the time you're working for people, and it's a hard deal in my game to, people don't end up, not too many of them end up buying their own property and stuff like that. I mean, they live well, but it's kind of hand to mouth, a lot of them.
Right.
So my we own a 48-acre farm and most of our own competition horses. I do have a couple that I have in partnership with some clients, but um, I like to own our own horses for myself, and my wife and daughter show as well. But um, I'm a loyal owner. I'm never going to take a winning horse away from me to ride. And in the past, I've had horses I was doing well with, and people changed and moved them to someone else. So, um, the
Mm.
way I do it and whatnot, it's a little different than maybe some of the other people in my game have done it. But at the end, it's gotten, I'm getting closer to the end of my career, but I've still got some fight left in me. We're going to go for a while here still, but like I say, it's been maybe a different approach and a different way to get here than a lot of people in my game do it. But at the end here, it's a pretty good deal. I've got our own property and our own horses, and I do have good clients that pay bills as well. So we've got several different avenues to keep feeding ourselves for a while.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's interesting, Aaron, because I'm sitting here. The reason why I look a little bit like a deer caught in the headlights is because I got here late to this podcast because I was talking to somebody about something that will add yet another element to my life.
Mm-hmm.
I probably don't have any business trying to do that to. But it's like you were talking about the roadmap. I'm really not sure where I'm at on my map right now, but you can feel it's like a big forest with little pathways going here and there, and sometimes you have a good intersection of two things. They kind of line up. So, because you were saying there's not many people that end up being successful at this, and probably a big reason for that is because I don't know your situation. I'm just listening, kind of learning a little bit about you as we go here. But I know for some of the other guys I know that are successful at this, it's a lot of things they've got mashed together. It's not like you're like guys in agriculture where you grow a crop and you sell it at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's kind of basic. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, but you see where the profit's coming from. You see what to put into it, and you get it. And then it's definitely a lot harder than a guy that's a company guy or just has something where he's skilled, he works, and he gets paid. Like you're creating this ecosystem, which at times you feel like you're not only not in the green, but the red's getting a darker and darker bit of red all the time, and you wonder if it's your own blood maybe that's dyeing that red color red. So yeah, it's really cool to hear your story, because I imagine there must have been a point. Like, did you, like, getting into this, did you know that to become successful at this, you were going to have to just do all kinds of things and feel your way through it? Or did you just kind of figure that out at one point and then lean into it?
Yeah.
Because I imagine there must have been times where you thought, like, I ought to just stick to one thing or go do something else. Did you ever want to quit?
No, other than, when I was young, and I gotta say, I've never really had a plan. Other than my talent for jumping, which, is my natural talent is top of the pyramid, really. The difficulties in the game are, managing that, getting yourself on good horses and things like that. But my thoughts get jumbled. But
Yeah.
So like I never wanted to do anything else. I mean, like as a kid, I catch rode horses for people. And I just did it and was good at it. And I got paid probably starting out when I was 13 or 14, started getting paid to ride people's horses. And never for a while, when I was 18 or 19, I had an idea that I wanted to maybe get into thoroughbreds and train some race horses. And, I never quit showing horses, but I kind of was I never had a super focused plan other than an idea that I'd like to do the top level of show jumping. So I had jobs and worked for people, and and then I took I got into an odd partnership with a woman, and spent 20 years probably working with her. And again, my business ran a little different than the normal way people in my game do it, but I was able to gain a lot of knowledge, and she was a tough person and didn't really lend. You need money. You need some money behind you in my game to have the horsepower, and she was real good at running the people with money off. So it was always a struggle to have good enough horses and whatnot. About when I was nearly 40 or late 30s, I kind of ended that partnership, and just shoot, I'm 54 now. And right now I'm getting the best horses I've ever had. Like I say, I'm a bit older, so it's, my we're getting closer to the end of my window, but I'm also getting better at, the part of getting better horses and being able to even doing it without, a big billionaire owner. I'm getting closer to maybe finding, a formula where I've got good enough horses to get to some of these really top events. I mean, we're already, I've already got a record at quite high level at some big events and whatnot, but I still want more. But even at my age, I'm still getting closer to doing it. Even when you almost, my desire is as strong as it ever was. So as long as I stay fit and healthy enough, we're going to get this done and win something big.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I don't totally understand about your world. I understand some about, horse education and obviously like what you guys actually do when you go and compete. And I take it that's the pinnacle, is going and competing and then doing well. What's kind of the business model though for, obviously I know you said you had a kind of unorthodox route, and then there's billionaires, they have another route too. But what's the route, like a typical route? How do you make money? Do you make money from competing at a show, or is it through sponsorships? Like, what's kind of could you give me an example of a formula? Because I know nothing about that world besides that I know horses and I know people kind of, and I know what the competition is, but I have no idea how that works.
Well, the avenues of income I have are the Grand Prix horses we own, competing them, and winning money. So, like the last couple of years, we've been near $1 million in earnings with the horses that we own ourselves. So, and your expense, I mean, there's quite a bit of expense, but if we're winning that kind of money, there's a bit of a margin there, which is nice. I also have clients that I train, and board their horses and train them and take them to horse shows. So, you're billing your clients as well. And then, kind of your third main avenue is buying horses to resell. So either you buy, we buy quite a few horses from Europe that I've got some connections over there, and you try and buy horses that are easy enough to ride that you can kind of sell them to, some non-expert riders that have more money than you paid for the horse. So those are kind of our three main income avenues. And when you're not winning, maybe you sell a horse, and then kind of you have your clients paying the bills every month to kind of just take care of those monthly costs. So, sales and winnings are the kind of the gravy for us.
Yeah, and when you said you like the love of the sport, that kept you going, you never wanted to quit. I could totally understand that, and I think I've been in the horse industry long enough now that I recognize that's not a terrific way to make money. And then I recognize I love riding horses every day. Mm-hmm. So that's why I don't want to quit one bit.
Yeah.
And but have you ever run into like an idea, maybe you had an idea and you thought, hey, this is right in line with my passion for horses. I love it. And I could make more money at that. And so you kind of started doing that, and then you got into it for a little while and then realized, wait a minute, I don't really love this. This totally derails my love of horses. And then you've had to leave that one behind. Like something, it is inside of the horse business. Maybe you even work with horses every day or with people and horses. But then like that particular little business model that you were adding to your collage of life, you're like, that one's no good because it's not something I really love. And like currently, do you feel like everything you're doing, you just love all of it, or do you do some things that you don't really love at all, but it's kind of just part of the horse business model.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it gives you time to pursue what you love.
The clients, it'd be great if we didn't have to have them. If we could, if I came from a little bit of money on my own that I didn't have to work for and could just kind of do the competition and sales, that'd be great, because then you take some humans out of the equation, because we certainly don't take horses out of the equation at all. But
yeah.
Other than that, I mean, we all have to do a little bit of stuff that we don't love. So, and not that we don't love it, but it's a bit more work training the people and dealing with them, than it is just going out there and working with a horse, Yeah.
Because that's something I've found is you'll have these ideas where you think you could add that to your business, and then you start doing it, and it's just not that fun.
Right.
Like, man, I mean, if I'm really going to do that, I ought to just not even flirt with trying to make it look horsey or be a part of my horse life. And I'll just take off some time and go do that, just change clothes basically and do that totally off campus. But you say people, like we do this podcast and it's 100% people related and it's quite a bit of fun. But,
right.
Joe and I do choose everybody we talk to. So I guess there is that. There's not like an open book where you just sign up to do a podcast. So, but yeah, no, that's something that I found is you have these, I'll have these ideas to do stuff. And I guess cause I'm really young and it's cool talking to you because you're talking about how you we say like Forrest Gumped your way to where you are. Obviously you've probably put a lot of effort behind all the actions and decisions you've made, but you've kind of like Forrest Gumped your way along, and you're looking back over your map going, that's interesting. Roadmap. I wouldn't have predicted that ahead of time.
Exactly.
And so for a guy like me, like I'm going into that going like, I wonder if this is the road or if that's the road that leads to death or life, and you only find out by going down that road. Joe and I were hanging out together this weekend and we talked about this one night till like 2 a.m, but like you can't, well, I don't want to butcher this, but like something Joe said to me, and he said, I don't even know where you heard it, Joe, I forget, but he said, sometimes life is like being in an apple tree, and you're in the apple tree, and you have branches going out all around you, and the fruit is ripe, and it's ready to be picked. It looks great. But unless you get on one of those branches and start shimmying down to the end of the branch and pick the fruit, that fruit's going to spoil and go bad, and you're not going to get any of it. And when you shimmy down that branch and kind of commit to that branch's fruit, well, you might not make it back up the branch and onto another branch. You might not be able to. But if you don't shimmy down one of them, you won't get any of it.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool hearing your story because, I don't know, I guess there's 100 ways things can work out. But if you just are persistent.
If you do reach out that one branch and fall, then you get back to the trunk of the tree and you got to climb back up again and find another one.
Yeah. Get good at tree climbing, I guess. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, obviously you made it through all that and you have your sanity intact and it sounds like you're doing pretty well. So that's really encouraging for somebody like me to hear that story because it encourages me to just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Just keep pressing on, and you're not going to get anywhere if you don't keep pressing on.
No, it's all in front of us, no matter what. It's like if you have a bad ride on a horse, I'll just drive myself crazy, whether it's a competition ride or a training ride that you wanted to kind of get something out of, and you didn't get it. But man, it eats you, I mean, that's the horse person I am. I mean, it eats at you that you didn't get it done how you wanted, to communicate to the horse in his training, or if you don't ride well enough or your training doesn't work well enough to have the competition you wanted to have, and it eats you, and you think about it until you get another chance to get out there and fix it. So, you learn from the past, but it's always about moving forward to you have to move forward to meet success. So,
Wow, I never thought of that. That would be kind of frustrating if you only competed, I don't know how often you compete, but it's definitely there's a larger
Sounds like a
span of time
lot.
between riding a horse every day. Yeah, but Joe, like I mean, you know how let's say you're starting a colt and you
Yeah.
go out every day and you could work with him every day. And if you get a bad
Hmm.
change today, it's not that long till tomorrow morning. But if you might be riding that horse every day, but you're only competing him, I don't know, let's say you went once a week even, you got to wait all week till you
Yeah,
compete
yeah,
next week. But if you're doing something like a Grand Prix or something that comes around once a year and you screw up this year, you've got to just kind of
yeah.
just hang in there till you get to go try again next year.
Waiting a day to fix it is bad enough, and then you get where it's competition and higher level horses, and the bigger the competition, the more special the competition, the less often they have it, so you are,
Yeah.
if you're jumping, some, like you say, some of the bigger events only happen once a year or whatnot. So you have something on your calendar and you really want to kind of mark that competition off on your list of successes, and you don't get it done this time, you might have a long wait to fix it. So um, World Cup finals. That happens once a year, and Olympics happens every 4 years. I haven't had the chance to mess up an Olympics yet. So but if the bigger the competition, some of those things, there's more time in between them, and um, so. But even so, even the wait, if you ever do get there and get the success, that's what makes it sweeter. Is you know the time and the work to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The reward and the struggle are directly related.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, a good example of that. We have a little dog that hangs around the ranch named Leroy. Just a little he's a miniature long-haired Dotson. And he's kind of cute, sits around all the time, and he was on a chair the other day, and I'd been dogging it out for a few days, and I rode a few horses, and it was kind of heating up, and I was like, I just want to sit down for a minute. And I walked over to the chair, and I picked up that dog and put him in my lap, and I was sitting there just petting him. And I only sat there for like 10 minutes, and that was the most peaceful feeling I felt all day that day. And I can still remember it to this moment. Like I can almost relive it in my mind. And I've never thought sitting in a chair petting a dog was that exciting. That was exciting. And I think I'd just been working a lot, working enough that sitting there for 10 minutes petting a dog, that was some bliss.
Yep.
And that's a teeny little thing, but I can recall it right now. Like
Mm-hmm,
if you asked me what was your best moment last week, it was sitting there petting that dog.
right.
It was wild.
Yeah, sometimes you never know what's going to be the reward that day.
Yeah.
It might be, some breakthrough you get on your horse, and it might just be something simple and unrelated like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Aaron, these horses you're developing, you're talking about having a formula to, kind of operate on the budget you do. Are you getting like your personal horses? Are you starting them, or like are you getting them as 3-year-olds? Are you importing them, breeding them? What's how are you
To
getting them
jump
on
the
the farm?
levels, they're gonna start jumping Grand Prix maybe as an 8-year-old. Probably by the time to win something really big, they're going to be 10, 11, 12, 14. They're going to be older horses to go to these top international competitions. And really, once a horse gets to be 6 or 7 years old and it's showing a lot of ability and, the mind for the game and whatnot, they start getting pretty expensive. So we try to buy 4 or 5-year-old, 4 and 5-year-olds, kind of, you can see some of their ability at that point, but but it's a long ways off. So you might be able to buy a horse with enough of a competition engine in it, still at a reasonable price, and then you bring them along, in your own system and whatnot, and hopefully you have a horse that's not blemished or tarnished from any bad training, and hopefully, he still shows a little bit of Michael Jordan in him by the time he's ready to start jumping some bigger competitions.
Right.
Like I try to explain to people in our game, for the for an athlete, there's a pyramid, and there's not too many Michael Jordans up there at the top of the pyramid, so it's hard to get, the physical talent, and obviously there's less of them that can do the tougher and tougher jobs, and then, if you do get a horse is good enough, then you have to not mess them up with your training. It takes years. It takes years to make a good horse, and it only takes one little mistake maybe to ruin them. So
yeah,
you gotta, there's a lot goes into the whole thing.
Yeah, and these horses, like, are they typically? I mean, I assume if they're that age, they've probably been started under saddle somewhere.
Yeah, most of them.
And then
most of them,
Yeah.
we had a couple mares, and we've bred a few, and when you breed them, you get what you get. And we didn't really do serious breeding, so we probably weren't starting with quite enough quality in the breeding program. We've got a couple. We don't have mares any longer, so the breeding program itself is over. We do have a few young horses still, so who knows if they'll be any good? But they look good as 3-year-olds. They're started and popping over little tiny logs and stuff and look good still. But it's a long ways off telling if they're going to be good competition horses.
Yeah.
But
so is that a big part of the game? Kind of developing, I guess it would be like developing connections or places you can go to find these horses.
Here in the United States, it's not so many people, start really young horses for our sport. That happens more in Europe. They're a bit better at that. It's a bit cheaper for them to breed horses and kind of get them to a level where they're, doing enough that people would buy them. So like I say, most of the horses we get, probably 4 or 5-year-olds. If I can afford a 6 or 7-year-old with talent, I'll obviously try to buy that, because you're, just that much further into the process. But, the Europeans breed a lot more horses than we do. And they probably have their breaking and starting system is different than what we're discussing, but they're also probably better at it on a level than some of the people that here in America. If I bought a 5 or a 6-year-old, I'd prefer to buy one out of Europe these days. Just I think they've been handled a little better and started better than the people that would do it here in America with young horses. Don't have the background you guys have, or and like I say, it's a different background that they use in Europe, but it's a better level of a different background for those horses, so they'd be a bit more advanced if you're buying a young horse out of Europe.
Yeah. Well, in a way, that kind of makes sense to me, because, being here in Virginia and kind of being around the hunter jumper deal quite a bit and having clients that are in that world send me horses, it's becoming apparent that at least in the hunter jumper industry, there aren't a lot of people that handle young horses
Yeah.
in the United States, or at least in the part of the United States I'm at.
Like I say, the Europeans, it's a bit more of their culture. At least our type, the jumping horses, it's a bit more of their culture, and you're going to have, people that did it from a younger age and are kind of, and it's done professionally. They breed horses on a high scale with lots of horses, so they're on a level creating the educated people that have been around horses, because they have the need. It's more of a, here you get a breeder, and it's one breeder in one little town in Virginia, and some girl is breaking the horses, and he's doing a bad job, but it's not,
Right.
over there it's more of a profession, and rather than so there's more people doing a little better job of it, probably.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably more comparable to like out west on some like big quarter horse operations where people have, if not full time, at least seasonal colt starters that come in and start a big wave of colts for them in the 2-year-old year. Because like you said, if you don't have the number of young horses to warrant someone with that skill level to get it all done, it just isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But I've never been over to Europe to buy horses, so it's kind of like, obviously you know way more about it than me. But I think, kind of like you're saying, I think it's more of a it's more of a business where they've scaled it a lot higher. So it's like we do have a lot more young horses.
It's a lot bigger, so there's a professional level to it. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it sounds like you preferred the European, like importing as opposed to buying American.
Yeah,
with these products.
I'll buy a horse from anywhere if it, that's another aspect is you can't pigeonhole yourself into one little idea, because a good horse can come from anywhere, and a good horse, the best time to find a good horse probably is when you're not looking for one. The worst thing, I always have my eyes open. I'm never like, oh no, I'm not going to look at your horse because I'm not looking for one right now. You're never going to find a good horse like that, So, I'm never looking for a horse more so on one day than a day. Like, horse comes in here and shows me talent, I'm going to try and figure out, how to get it bought. Whether I'm looking for a horse or not. So,
so you're kind of saying you don't go horse shopping at a certain time.
Not really. I have clients maybe that I'm they need a horse, and you'll do that. But as a professional, no, I'm never necessarily shopping. I'm shopping every day, and I'm not shopping every day. If anytime a horse shows up that shows talent and a budget that maybe you can get it bought, that's when to buy a horse, is when you like one and you can get it bought.
So if you're that way about buying horses, you sell some horses too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're selling a lot of these horses that you're buying, yeah. So we've talked about this before, Joe and I, about when you go to sell a horse, like if you decide you're going to sell him at a certain time, it can put a constraint on the way you ride him or the training program you have him in. What's your deal or protocol when it comes to selling horses? Are they always for sale, or do you have a certain time that you get them ready for and then sell them? Or begin marketing them after a certain date?
No, there's two types of horses I buy. I'll buy some horses that are basically just to resell them. It's a horse that can do a job for a client, but it's not going to have the talent level for me to win Grand Prix, make money, maybe have an international level horse. So some horses I buy just with the sole purpose of reselling. And then we also were buying horses to produce for sport. That we want to show in Grand Prix. Maybe it's good enough for me to compete or my wife to compete. Those horses that we buy for that, they're not really for sale until they get to a level where, he's not quite good enough for what we want to do. We need to, he needs to find a new job, be a horse for a lower level rider to compete at lower level and get experience on, something like that. So, those horses that we're trying to buy and produce for, that look like they might have ability to do higher level competition, they're not really, I'm not looking to sell them until, if they're good enough, we're probably going to try and keep them, or once they prove they're not to the level we're looking for, then they'd be for sale for an easier job.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We had a guest on here who's he's a South African, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of polo cross, but polo cross is a big sport in South Africa,
Right.
and he
Haven't heard.
he breeds. Yeah. Well, he breeds polo horses and polo cross horses, and he'll do the same deal where he'll buy kind of what horses maybe he thinks can do jobs for other people, but he had a really good good thought. Earlier you talked about the horses and the winnings kind of being the gravy. He said he had a real conversation with his wife and kind of how their ranch was running, and he said, I think the day we have to put milk and bread on the table from selling horses is the day we're going to be in real trouble. So, and it's not like he doesn't sell a lot of horses.
Right.
He does. But his big emphasis was, if you're going to sell a horse, it can't just be sell it by this date. You got to sell it to the right situation. You got to sell that horse kind of into success, right? Because otherwise, a couple weeks down the road, people are going to be at the local bar talking about this crazy horse someone bought from, Aaron or Joe or Ben.
Yeah. No,
And then all of a sudden it's, no one's buying any more horses from you.
Right. No, you don't. You don't want to get a reputation like that. So certainly, finding the right situation for the horse is, that's something to be a big consideration for sure.
Yeah.
So when you're shopping for horses in Europe, Aaron, do you fly over there for each sale? Do you fly
No.
over for some of them, or do you buy most of them sight unseen?
I've got a couple people that I've dealt with for years, and I kind of just, I let them. They'll send me videos periodically. They kind of know what I may or may not be interested in. So, or if I'm looking for something more specifically, I'll let them know, and then there's always kind of a fresh inventory coming across my phone. So just kind of keep looking. I've got a girl in Slovakia that worked for me one winter, probably almost 15 years ago now, and we bought some really good horses from her, and just I've been looking at her horses for a while, and she sent me lots of nice horses, but one's too young, one's too this. I prefer not to buy a mare. It costs more to import them because they have to go through a longer quarantine than a gelding. So she'd been sending me videos for 4 months, and finally she sent one the other day, and I said, that's the one. It just checked the boxes that I was looking for, and not that I've got a list of boxes on a piece of paper, but it just kind of caught my eye, and it wasn't a mare, and it was a hair younger than I wanted. It's just a 5-year-old, but it had enough enough things in it, and the price worked. So I'm like, there's one. So it just it's and it's not no hard and fast there's some guidelines, but not rules, that I follow.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of
Yeah.
like horsemanship.
Did
Yeah.
did COVID affect the importation of horses very much?
Not really the importation, but we're kind of past it now. But there were 2 years worth of horses that are last year and the year before, horses that were kind of in that 5, 6, 7-year-old range were a lot less experienced than horses normally would have been at that time, because they were stricter for longer than we were here in America. So a lot of those horses didn't get the showing and mileage that they normally would have gotten. So for a couple of years there, they still were the same talent, but they just didn't have the same amount of riding and show experience that you normally would have gotten from horses in those age groups.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like
That's very interesting.
7-year-old that I sold earlier this year, or no, he would have been 8 this year, but he came over last year as a 7-year-old, and he was, almost like a colt you'd be starting.
Yeah.
He didn't.
So yeah, that's much like the problems we had with the school system here in the States, or probably around the world, where you had kids kind of like a year or two behind mentally.
Yeah. No, I mean,
so you had that with your horses.
He was bigger and stronger, than a 5-year-old horse would have been, but he didn't ride it. He didn't steer any better. He didn't, he was willing and honest to jump a fence, but just the brakes and the transmission and the steering wheel weren't fully developed.
Yeah.
We got him caught up and sold him earlier this year, but it took a little longer than what you would have, bringing that horse over. It took a little longer to kind of get him ready for market than, normally that horse you'd get it and he'd be ready to sell as soon as he hit the shore here, but it took a little bit more riding and training to get him there.
Yeah.
So, before we were recording, you were talking about, how many horses you're dealing with on the property now. And it sounds like, in a good way, you got a lot on your plate. So I'd be curious, what's kind of the protocol when you get a new horse over here? Like, are you going to start working with that horse? Is your wife going to start working it? Are you going to have, folks working for you start with the horse? And obviously each horse is an individual, but kind of where's your starting point? And, if you want to build them up to do this job that you're trying to get your horses to do, where does the foundation need? Obviously the foundation is getting them started, but say you're on their back and you're like, all right, we're going. How do you build them up from there?
Well, that kind of like right now, my wife has some nice competition horses, and she's gotten, she's not quite as talented as I am, but she was always a horse person. That's how we met, strangely enough.
Yeah.
But I try to keep enough. Oh shoot! I might have to get a power cord here. I try to keep
No worries.
a nice enough horse for her, or several nice enough horses for her, because she keeps the house running, and she enjoys the sport as much as I do. So I get some horses. That's always a consideration. I'm looking for a top level horse, and I'm also looking for almost a top level horse for her to ride, so that she doesn't get mad at me. So you try to get a horse that might suit her, because if they suit her, for her to do a pretty high level, they're probably good enough for me also, and they're probably a little easier to sell than if I'm the only one that can ride them. So that is a factor. But if we get a horse in here, she's gotten a bit handier at training and all that. So almost everything we've got at this point, she can train it, if maybe not quite as well as I can. It's not, almost everything we have, she can work it and train it to a level also, So, even though she competes as an amateur, she's not, she's not allowed in our game. She can't teach any of the clients or do anything. She can't ride their horses or teach them or anything like that. She's only allowed to do office work. So that's, we own a lot of our own horses. That way there's plenty of riding for her as well, But
Sure.
That I'm kind of getting jumbled here in my head.
Yeah.
Doesn't always stay clear up in this dome.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Along those lines, Aaron, could you expound a little bit about, you just said, because your wife doesn't have certain qualifications. Can you pull your camera down just a little bit too?
I'll try. Is that better?
Perfect. That's perfect.
That's
yeah,
a lot better.
Great.
Yeah.
And so how is that regulated? Because that's not something, for instance, like in the backyard horse trainer world, you can kind of teach whoever you want as long as they show up.
Right.
So how's that regulated?
Well, with our association that recognizes the horse shows, and you have to pay membership fees and all that, basically anyone, if someone rides horses for money, gives a lesson or teaches for money, you're a professional at that point. You don't necessarily have to pass a test to be qualified to do it, but if you accept money, you're a professional. And she competes in the amateur division, which is, they've got the horses earn the money in our competition. So she gets to compete for a fair bit of money, against other non-professionals. If we were to mess that up and she, was teaching or doing something like that, then she wouldn't be eligible for the amateur division, which, she is an amateur. So it's nice to be able to, compete against other amateurs and not be stuck in the, like I say, she's getting more and more proficient, but if she was stuck competing with the professionals, she has one real good horse that she jumps in some of the bigger classes, the Grand Prix that I compete in, not international level yet, but and she does take some placings. But if she was stuck and that's the only place she could show, then it would make it a bit harder for sure. So it's nice having those restricted classes to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it gives you a good practice ground. Not feel that under pressure. Huh. So do you take on any working students or?
Not right now. We have in the past. It's harder to get kids that have enough desire and talent in our game anyways. The other thing, my wife rides, so she's almost like a working student. And my daughter is 9 and she's got a couple ponies, and she's pretty keen on the game too. So that and the amount of clients we have, I've probably got about 10 people that I teach, and most of them have multiple horses that they ride and compete on too. So, our plate's already pretty full. One change you were talking earlier about, is there one part of your business that you might have tried and then you changed your mind and said, that's just not working as much. I guess the one change we've made is right now we've got enough clients and with enough horses that the one change we've made is we just say no to new people at the moment, because we just don't. The plate's full. We don't have time to do more. Just need like 2 more hours in the day to get done what we need to get done better.
Yeah, I bet you're enjoying that to an extent.
Yeah.
Joe and I were just talking about that the other day, that I had heard somebody comment in an interview at one point that a change he made in his life at a certain point where he achieved some success was canceling things or just saying no, like you just said. And he was like, that's the best thing. That's the best achievement point I've come to.
Yeah.
Is to be able to say no and just not worry about it, and know that you have enough success and clientele and a good name, and you're just saving yourself a headache, and you're going to be having a way better time in the long run.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
If there's what's the Down Under horsemanship, he's got a little TikTok thing on that. It's pretty funny. It's about a 30-second clip, and I can't repeat some of the words he uses or whatever. I mean, we probably could on a podcast, but I'll choose not to. But it's a pretty funny thing where he's got a lady asking him to train with him, and he says no, and she keeps asking, and he finally just lets her have it. And it's pretty funny the way he does it. So if you went and found that, you'd get a chuckle out of it.
Yeah. Well, I imagine a guy that has gotten to your level of success, and you obviously still enjoy life by the looks of things, talking to you, you've learned how to say no to things.
It's hard to say no.
You just can't say yes to everybody.
Yeah, it's hard to say no, though, because, I mean, when you're coming up, I mean, that's how you get somewhere, is saying yes. But it's hard to learn to say no. But at some point you have to, so that you can focus on, like I say, we've got enough clientele to make our monthly payments that we need to pay the feed bill and the hay bill and that kind of thing. But if you say yes to more people, then that takes time away from training your own horses, which, to accomplish to get to any more of my, competition goals I'd like to attain before I can't ride anymore or whatnot, I've got to have that time in the saddle on my horses to get there, if that's going to happen, so you do have to say no to get somewhere eventually.
Yeah, I imagine there's got to be some kind of a metric, and I'm sure you could speak to it more than Joe or I could, but if you're wanting to say no to something, and then you kind of think about it and you realize you're just saying no because you're tired or you're sick of it or something, maybe you're just being lazy and giving up. But if you're saying no because you actually are successful enough that you don't really need them, then maybe you're ready to say no. I'm not sure I don't think I'm at that point at all. I probably need to just keep saying yes, be diligent. But do you think, is there a certain point where you feel like you evaluated that stuff? Even like your most recent decision, where did you put much thought into that and go, you know what, we're doing fine. We don't need to do that.
Well, I'd have to credit my wife for being smart enough for that, because it's hard for me to say no, because people want help with their horse or want help with their riding or whatever. And, I'm a person, I like to help people, but eventually you do have to say no so you can focus on what you're doing and do it well and do it better. Because if there's too many yeses, then there's not enough time to have the quality of work. And
Boy, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it can be found in other places, but this horse deal, especially like people that get into like the horsemanship deal where you're helping people get better with their horse and solve problems, you see it a lot. And I'm sure Joe and I both have fallen into it where you get started helping people with their horse and you do a lot of free stuff. Like you do free lessons and then you drive to their house and you're talking to them on the phone after hours and like all these little things you're doing because you're so excited about them being able to learn what you found that you throw all these little freebies in there trying to see them succeed. And in the end, a lot of those folks, you don't even remember them. I don't even think they ride horses anymore. But you really invest a lot of free time trying to help people out because it's so exciting.
Yeah.
Because, you just think this is the greatest thing on earth. Like you described that moment of seeing Buck, and you're probably thinking, it's like you just took is it the blue pill from the Matrix? You took the red pill. You were red pilled, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then you see a lot of folks, especially a lot of young people who are starting a little horse training business, throw a lot of freebies at the customer, trying to get them red pilled too.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, when earlier you kind of alluded to how you maybe got the opportunity to be at the high level a little later in life. Something Ben and I are kind of on our own time pretty passionate about is trying to stay in shape so we can hopefully ride a long time. And so I'd be curious, someone like you who is showing and doing Grand Prix and riding these big athletic horses that are doing big athletic feats. Do you have kind of measures in place to kind of keep yourself fit for as long as you can?
I wish I had time for that, but the measures is just staying in the saddle, really. I'll tell a funny story. A few years back, I was I probably lost 40 pounds 4 or 5 years ago. But the reason of it was, I didn't really have a super horse at the time. The best horse we had was my wife's horse. And I'd shown him from time to time in some Grand Prix classes, not the biggest Grand Prix classes, but I'd shown him from time to time in a class, and he'd won a few of them. And the upcoming winter, they'd really increased the prize money here at the horse shows. Normally the classes every Sunday for the Grand Prix were $50,000. And then this year, I can't remember what, 4 or 5 years ago, they upped the money, and, the Grand Prix they had 100,000, and then the next week was going to be 150, and then a 200, and then another 150, and another 200. So the prize money had increased, by 3 or 4 times for that upcoming season. And my wife said, you really ought to try Elusive. That's the name of her horse. You really ought to try Elusive in those Grand Prix this winter. And I said, he's not a very big horse. And I was like, you can't. I said, he's not that good. He's a good horse, but those classes are bigger than the ones he's jumped. He's not going to do those, And she said, you really ought to try, but you should lose some weight. And so I listened to her. Imagine that, I listened to her. And I went on a diet. I found one that finally worked for me. Because looking back at some pictures and stuff, actually the one, there was a video clip of me leading my daughter on her pony in the backyard here over some little tiny fences when she was about 3 years old. I look at that video and I'm like, holy cow, I had no idea I was that big. But anyways, so I'd start jumping him in those classes, and he won a $150,000 class, and he won a $200,000 class, and third in the one, and he ended up winning a couple $100,000 that winter. And so she was right; the horse could do it. And I found a diet that worked for me, and stayed on it. So just the main thing is, for me, I don't have time to go to the gym and exercise or whatever, but I found a way to get down to 180 pounds, which is a nice enough weight for me, and nice enough weight for the horses. And other than that, I'm just in the saddle and doing farm work, fixing a fence board, dragging the arena, moving jumps, whatever it is, that you have to do when you're in the horse business.
Sure. Oh man, I don't miss moving jump standards around anymore. Like I did as a kid.
That's the worst.
That makes a lot of sense.
Could you tell us what that initial diet was?
Basically, I just kind of did daytime fasting. I really don't eat during the daytime. I just, stay busy enough, and then I eat whatever I want for dinner. So I still enjoy a big meal, but back before that, I'll cook when I fire up the grill. There's only 3 of us in the house, but I'll cook 6 steaks, and every morning I grab a napkin and 1 steak out of the fridge, and just big old ribeye or whatever, and eat that when I drive the pickup up to the barn. So I don't do that anymore. But that was it. And the other part of that diet that works for me is we can go on vacation. I can cheat for the weekend if I want to, but when I get home and get back in the saddle on Tuesday, I can turn that diet back on. It's just like an on-off switch. If you want to go on vacation or whatever and enjoy yourself, you can do that. But when I get home, I can just flip the switch and turn it right back on. Which any other diet I ever did, if you try to go low fat or low carb or whatever, the minute you cheat, you were off the diet. But this, for some reason, I can cheat on a vacation and come home and turn the switch back on, and I'm right back going. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's super healthy, but it works. So that's what I'm doing.
Working so far. Are you a coffee guy?
3-4 cups in the morning. Yeah. Absolutely. Gotta have coffee. And I prefer good coffee.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. What have you got for good coffee
I've got
now?
a Nespresso Professional machine, which has these little pods. It's designed for offices. Luckily I have a business name for my farm. So, because you have to have a business name to get them to sell you the machine and all that. So it makes it makes a pretty nice cup of coffee. And they're individual servings, so you don't have to make a pot and pour out what you don't drink. So it's a nice coffee maker.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you kind of understated that. You got a commercial coffee maker.
Yeah,
you're definitely a coffee guy.
Yeah, no kidding. Tell you what, man, I could probably spend a week just working outside in Florida, and I'd lose 10 pounds.
It's weird. I always used to think, when the summer comes, it'll be hot and I'll sweat, and that'll make me lose weight. But the heat never helped me with that. Heat was almost worse for me. But my program now works. So whether it's hot.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
We lost him. It's
okay.
Maybe he'll be back.
Yeah, I'll text him.
Man, that's pretty cool, huh? He's got a commercial coffee machine.
Yeah. Big time coffee guy.
That's legit.
Oh, Aaron said
You
the
hear from
phone
him?
the phone he was on overheated.
Oh man, we just about made it.
Yeah, we were close.
Real close. Well, if it's going to take him a minute, we could cut it. And then when he signs back in, pick him back up.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we will return very soon. Okay, now
Sweet.
you're back for real.
Back for real.
Recording again. Back for real.
No, what were we talking about? Oh, coffee.
Yeah,
Big coffee guy, doesn't eat during the day. That's how you stay in shape.
pretty much.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
The
like
Aaron
real
Vale
shape, but it works for me.
So
I think you're doing better than most Americans, yeah.
Yeah. So on like in Grand Prix show jumping, how much does rider fitness play a part? Do you feel like have you ever seen someone, and maybe it's an amateur, and it's like, man, if they just lost some weight or got in a little better shape, maybe got a little stronger, they'd be getting a whole lot more done.
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
that a thing?
certainly you've got there's a level of athleticism for sure. So, you don't want to be too big.
Mm-hmm.
That said, there have been some bigger people that have done just fine, but certainly, a fit person's gonna be in better shape to be competitive than someone who isn't. Just that's probably going to be across the board in any athletic endeavor, I would say, though.
Yeah.
And certainly,
riding,
certainly not only for the rider, but it makes the horse's job a little easier if he's carrying 160 pounds rather than 260.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's a good segue to something I just thought of. We actually, a while back, a couple episodes ago, we had Melanie Smith Taylor on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came on, and she was talking about fitness of the horses, and she said she has kind of been out of the game and doesn't know a lot about like the modern show jumping as far as where it is. Like she does the commenting, but as far as the training, but she did make the comment she felt like there's a lot of people who do not prepare their horses adequately.
Right.
She felt like the horses were not getting fit enough, and I'd be curious to get your 2 cents on it. Like, how do you manage your horse's fitness? And I mean, I'm sure there has to be times where they take a season off or something like that. So how do you kind of work through all that with your horses?
I don't know. It just kind of is a natural occurrence for us. I mean, we work our horses. They get probably a good 45-minute ride where, a good portion of that's going to be trot and some canter work, and probably you're going to there's a level of jumping fitness they need as well. So, depending if they haven't competed, you're going to, in a while, you're probably going to give them a couple pretty good jump schools where they're, basically in the gym, kind of, mimicking the amount of jumping they do in competition. So you're stressing their lungs just a little bit and stuff like that, so that, when they're coming to the end of the course, they haven't really felt that for a while. So, with that in mind, it's really not I don't know, it's not too hard to keep them plenty fit, I don't think. I mean, some horses need a little more work than others, but generally, with your daily work and, a little bit of extra jumping work, depending on how soon a competition is, it all takes care of itself pretty well, I would say.
Okay. So you've never gotten to gotten to like a show and you're like, man, I just don't, or maybe that horse was doing more than one class and you're like, oh, I think he's kind of tapped. He's like, he doesn't have it in him.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're jumping high level, I mean, a horse is probably only going to jump, probably maximum 3 competitions in one show, where, he might have they'll have like a warm up a little easier competition to start, and then you're usually going to have a qualifying class after that, which is pretty high level, and then they'd probably have a day off, and then the Grand Prix would be, the highest, a little bit more, a little tougher than the qualifying class would be. So, that's enough stress on a horse, and you might do that level 2 weeks in a row, but you probably your horse wouldn't jump a big 3 level or three classes competition more than 2 weeks in a row, just for the longevity of his career. That you can do that one week, you can do that 2 weeks, but then you'd probably rest him from competition for at least a week or 2 before you did that again. But like I said, with your daily training and schooling, I mean, you're going to have the odd horse that maybe carries a little extra weight and is a little tougher to keep fit than another one. But it's not too hard to. I don't feel, at least the way we work horses, I don't feel it's hard to keep them fit enough for competition.
Sure. Okay. Interesting.
In your training routine, do you all make use of like water or cryotherapy or those Beamer blankets or anything like that?
Oh, not a whole lot. I have a Beamer blanket that we use on a couple horses right now. Kind of seems to help loosen up their back a little bit. But we don't use a whole lot of extra machines, or we don't have a horse walker or a treadmill. We do have paddocks, and as long as the weather's good, our horses get turned out overnight, all of them. So they're used to moving around naturally a bit, which is maybe something that a lot of people in my game don't do. So I think that also, they're not out there working, but they walk and move around like nature intended. So I think that helps their fitness a bit.
Yeah. I'm sure it helps with their recovery a lot too.
Yeah, for sure.
He keeps blood flowing instead of sitting in a box stall. Yeah. So this was the last thing I had on my list because I was very excited to get to talk to you today. For as long as you've been in this game, and you it sounds like you said you got the first weekend of the 2023 that you haven't been at a show coming up soon, which is
this week. Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive seeing how it's May. But when you get on a horse and you go into a class now, is it like almost the same feeling for you now as doing a training ride at home, or do you still kind of have like maybe not anxiety, but like kind of that knob turns and you're like, okay, this is a competition?
With the bigger competitions, the ones you're aiming for that have some prize money and there's something at stake there. There's a little extra something under your skin that motivates you, and I think probably at this point I really enjoy riding on a daily basis, especially sometimes you feel like you're riding and training better than other times, but it's a lot of fun to just go out there and ride a horse and make some headway in their training. But also when you go to a competition and it's a big one and there's some money at stake or whatever, there's a little extra chill you get under your skin that makes it more important, makes it more fun. But I think that also drives you to be good in your daily training at home when you're not competing. Because horse competitions, the actual competition is a short affair. You're when you go through the start markers to the finish markers, I mean, you're probably competing there for 70 to 80 seconds. If you come back in a jump off round against the clock, probably 40 seconds on average. So, your competition day, amounts to just over 2 minutes of competition time,
Yeah.
So, but big competitions for sure get you a little extra pumped up and focused.
Did you ever have to deal with like performance anxiety as far as like butterflies in your gut or like, oh crap, I'm nervous?
When I was young, I got a little too nervous at times, but eventually you do it enough that the nerves become just a motivator, an extra focuser rather than something that gets in your way.
Yeah. Ben and I were talking this weekend about us and people we know that they like someone can be riding really well and then all of a sudden you go up and just lean on the fence and then they see you and you see things start to unravel just a little bit, and it's just so funny because like that's like people in our position who maybe ride all day and not a soul sees you, and it's like, man, if it just takes one person like hanging on the corral fence to kind of make you bobble a little bit, imagine going into a Grand Prix or something and into a stadium and there's stakes, there's other riders, and there's a crowd. And I was like thinking about that before we talked to you, and I was like, I think that would be a big adjustment period for me, but I'm sure it sounds like you kind of knew you wanted to go this route for a long time, so I'd imagine you'd kind of be able to put it all in the background.
If most people don't have I don't know, if you're into horses and you're really focusing on the horse, and what you're doing with him, so the rest of it is external. It's almost invisible to you,
Yeah.
but and we don't really get we get some competitions that have real good crowds, and there is an extra energy that comes from having a good crowd, but like I say, it's normally a good thing. It's not a negative. It's not detrimental to your performance normally.
Sure. Well, that's good. But, Ben, do you have anything else for Aaron before we wrap up here?
I don't think I do right now. I think we've covered a whole bunch.
Cool.
I was going to ask you something a minute ago, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But I guess it wasn't that terribly important.
Usually that's all I forget is the important stuff. So.
Yeah. We talked a lot about it in the beginning, but Aaron, I'd be curious because, I've got a lot of respect for what you've been able to do, and like you said, in the world you're in, being able to own and develop your own horses, that's quite an achievement. Whether that matters to your peers as much or not, I think it shows quite a bit of what you've accomplished as a horseman and what you've been able to accomplish in terms of building your reputation and your business too. But if you had people coming to you now, like say that 20-something-year-old that was in Camden, what advice, I guess, would you give your past self on how to get to where you want to be?
Just whenever anybody asks me that, what would you give advice to someone young that wants to do it? I mean, it's just put your work boots on, because this game's all about work, and the effort you put into it. and that's not just, you know, the work for getting better, but, you know, for someone to give you an opportunity as a working student, you know, or a trainer to put that interest into you, to give them knowledge, you know, that's only that stuff gets passed on to the people that show the desire to learn and the desire to work to get that knowledge, you know. So that's, you know, no matter what it is, be ready to muck a stall, rake the barn aisle, clean the trailer, you know, those are the tiebreakers for people that want to learn, and kids that get the extra information, you know, is the ones that are willing to work. So be ready to work if you want to do this.
Yeah, man, that doesn't that sound almost exactly like what we talked about with Rodney, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's kind of a theme on this podcast.
Funny how that is, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's really nice is
hard.
I don't think people can hear that enough, but it's really exciting, Aaron, to get to talk to different people like yourself. And so you're not ragging on week after week about the same thing. You're finding people who are successful, and there's a pattern. They're saying the similar thing. And then it really encourages a lot of folks. Like Joe asked you to say what you would say to your younger self. Well, there's probably, you know, a dozen or two listeners of this podcast, and maybe one of them is a younger self. And so I'm sure that helps them out a lot, but mostly it helps us out a lot to talk to guys like you and hear that encouragement of just put your work boots on.
Yeah.
It's really not that hard. It just takes a lot of determination to do it day after day, and it's really uplifting. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thanks for talking with us.
Well, and it reminds me to keep working too, because I've still got things to accomplish, and you know, work's the only way that's going to get me there. So.
Yeah. Well, I'd bet on you. I'd be anxious to see what you get done with these new prospects you got.
Well, we're hoping.
Yeah, cool. Well, Aaron, again, we know you're a busy guy, so we appreciate you taking the time to do all this.
No worries.
But
enjoyed it.
For everyone listening, that was episode 47 with Aaron Vale. Thanks, man.
All right. Well, and if we get Mr. Brannaman down here in January coming up, y'all have to come down and see what we do here in Florida.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to see that.
All right.
Yeah,
sounds
if you're
good.
ever coming up 75 and you need somewhere to stretch your legs or something, definitely pop in.
We'll do it. Sounds good.
All righty.
All right. Enjoyed that, guys.